And away we go. Hey, everyone. It's the day after the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. And the big question for Dolphin fans and for my guest, Chris Perkins of the South Florida Sun Sentinel, is how we feel about the selection of Kenneth Grant. Are we a little bitter about it? Are we a little like a lemon? Are we sweet on the pick like an orange? Or are we kind of depressed because of an orange that could be rotten around other rotten oranges?
Ooh, I see what you did.
The delivery was a little clunky, but you see what I'm getting at. How are you, Chris Perkins?
I'm good, man. I guess I'm doing better than Jalen Ramsey, who you just referenced, the IG story there with the citrus. But yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm feeling okay about this pick.
Yeah, that was, and before we dive into Kenneth Grant and everything there is to know about the Michigan man joining Michigan man Stephen Ross, saying a whole lot without saying a whole lot. That message from Jalen Ramsey, was it not?
Yeah, it kind of brings back memories of Rachel Bush, who is Jordan Poyer's wife. And she made some kind of reference last year about the motivation or the practice habits or something, some kind of doubtful remark kind of about the team's motivation or something, as I recall. And Jalen Ramsey, to me, is kind of dredging that up again. Different vibe, much more harsh from Jalen Ramsey, but kind of something along the same vibe to me.
Yeah, right. And Chris Greer was asked after the Dolphins made their selection of Kenneth Grant, again, about the idea of whether he wants to wait until after June 1st to make a deal involving Jalen Ramsey, a trade, I should say, because if the Dolphins do not wait until June 1st, they're looking at Jalen Ramsey's cap number for no longer being on the roster in excess of a little over $25 million, as opposed to, what is it, $6 million if they wait until June 1st. It's quite the difference. And Chris Greer basically said, well, we'll just see what happens and all that. Still a little difficult to believe that it's going to happen before June 1st, keeping in mind the Dolphins right now, I believe, has $16 million in cap space. They have to sign their rookie class. And then you tack on, this is counting Jalen Ramsey 16.6. So you tack on another $9 million. So that $16 million they have in cap space becomes $7 million. By the time you're done with the rookie class, not a whole lot left to supplement the roster, which still needs supplementing.
Yeah, you could come out of this draft still needing another starting cornerback. And if you're looking Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas, you're probably looking anywhere from $9 to $12 million a year. So, and that might be on the low end. Yeah, that might be on the low end.
They're not signing a cornerback at that price.
No, they're not. No, they are not.
Okay, good.
No, we're on the same page. Yeah. So you've got to be very careful with the money and with the personnel here.
Yeah, what they're going to try to do is get as established a veteran as possible, as cheaply as possible.
Right.
I don't think they're spending big money for any of those guys, or an interior offensive lineman, should they not land one in the draft they feel comfortable starting. Teron Armstead, by the way, was getting involved on social media with some draft action with the fans, and he threw out the idea, again, part of it very well might be Teron being a good teammate / former teammate of his young players, or maybe he knows something that we don't know and we'll soon find out, which would be great. But he was kind of semi-pumping the tires of Chasen Hines, who spent all of last year on the practice squad, as well as Andrew Meyer, the rookie free agent who made the 53-man roster last year, only to spend the entire season pretty much inactive. But the fact that the Dolphins kept him instead of, for example, Jack Driscoll, who they had signed as a free agent in Philadelphia, tells you they obviously feel comfortable that this guy's going to develop into a decent player at some point.
My favorite T-Stead tweet from yesterday was somebody questioned, are the reports of Mike McDaniel rubbing veterans the wrong way accurate? And Teron Armstead quote tweeted him and said, Mike McDaniel shouldn't be rubbing anybody.
I didn't see that one.
That was great.
That's funny.
That's great. So
that's
funny. Maybe he's got a comedy career.
Yes, he does. I saw another one like, you give me $20, I'll come back.
Right. Yeah. He's enjoying his life so far.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Now he's got a great personality. So again, if he wants to do TV, he'll be great at it. You referenced Rachel Bush, the wife of Jordan Poyer. I'm bringing his name back because today happens to be his birthday, 34th birthday. Happy birthday, Jordan Poyer.
Yeah.
Still without a team for 2025. Would not surprise me if it remained that way and that was the end of his career.
Yeah.
Maybe he hooks up for somebody on a 1-year deal. Who knows? But at this point, I can't see it being the Dolphins since they have young safeties who I think they want to see what they have in. Boy, well phrased. It's a good thing. If I were writing it, I'd go back over that sentence and retype it, but I said it and it came out very clunky and bad down. So anyway, they have newcomers Ashton Davis and Ife Melifonwu to go along with 2024 6th-round pick Patrick McMorris and Elijah Campbell. Okay, we've stalled long enough. Kenneth Grant, Chris Perkins' immediate reaction was what?
It's okay. My ideal was Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, but his knee injury is apparently so severe, I wouldn't touch that guy in the second round now. I really wouldn't, because while it's a better value, the knee is still going to be the same. So after Will Johnson was not a possibility, it went to Jahdae Barron, the cornerback from Texas, who went number 20, I believe, right, to Denver. Mm-hmm. I would have preferred Jahdae Barron, but I thought they needed defensive help. The first 2 picks I thought should go to the defense, to Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator. My preference would have been cornerback, D tackle. It turns out it's D tackle first. I'm good with it. I give him a letter grade of B. It's not my ideal, but I think it's a good pick. He's a run stuffer. He provides aggression and physicality, which are things the Dolphins needed.
Correct. And the way it stands right now, the way I look at it is he's a run stuffer with the potential, because of his physical attributes, the way he moves for a guy his size, to potentially become a high-end pass rusher for a D tackle. Maybe not Zach Sealer-like or Aaron Donald, certainly not Aaron Donald-like, but a fairly productive pass rusher. That's his ceiling. The floor is, chances are, he helps you against the run. Right. And defensive tackle, as we know, was a critical need for the Dolphins. So I think the combination of the two, the immediate impact that he can have as a run stuffer, plus the possibility he becomes, an all-around really, impressive, impactful D tackle in a couple of years or so, makes it a solid pick. Could it be considered a reach? Sure. I mean, they're like, if you look at most draft analysts, the ones who are bigger outlets, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, certain folks like that, I certainly wouldn't want to use Mel Kiper as, no offense, as the definitive word, but he had him ranked 30th on his board, which is why he hated the pick for the Dolphins. But I think, generally speaking, Jahdae Barron probably is a guy who's got maybe a bit better chance of being a good NFL player. If right now, considering he's more of a slot guy, even though he can play outside, right, maybe the bigger need was filled by Kenneth Grant as opposed to Barron, which would be one argument for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. That you already had a Jahdae Barron type in Kader Kohou. And so you needed to really, to me, this draft was about filling your need, right? Tyler Warren was there as the BPA, as the best player available, the tight end from Penn State. I'm so glad they did not touch him. So glad, because it is more important in this draft for this particular team to fill needs than to, I know this sounds bad, than to add talent. And I understand that this could be a generational talent, maybe a Brock Bowers, George Kittle type, but it does not make the Dolphins a better team. And understand what I'm saying here, because Tyler Warren, a tight end, would be a luxury. And you would still not be able to protect Tua from pass rushes up the middle. You would still not have the short yardage kind of, final help that you would need as an offense. I'm talking about, things that would still be holes in your team. You would still not have that short yardage guard, that push that you need. You would not have a starting D tackle 2 starting corners you would be short, perhaps a starting safety you would be short. So Tyler Warren, he was a luxury. I think this particular team needed to fill needs, and you filled a need with Kenneth Grant.
No, and here's the thing: is Tyler Warren was never there's never anybody who suggested he's Brock Bowers, and
Right.
Brock Bowers, had he been in this draft, could you have made an argument? Don't care about needs. This guy's going to be in the Pro Bowl year after year after year after year, or an All Pro, whatever, because whatever you want to use as a gauge. Tyler Warren's not that guy. Tyler Warren was a very clean prospect, but again, to me, not enough of a sure thing, perennial all-star to not deal with needs. And this is why, again, to me, it's always marry BPA to best player available. Sorry, BPA to need as best you can.
Right.
Okay. Kenneth Grant more than likely was not the BPA, but he filled a massive need. So you're very high on the need list and you're good on the BPA. Dolphins obviously preferred him to Walter Nolan or Derek Harmon, both of whom went later. And I couldn't actually reach out to my buddy in Arizona. I could not, for me, shake the thought if you're because and I mentioned him because he wound up playing for the Dolphins after the fact. The Arizona Cardinals, the last time they selected a defensive tackle from Mississippi in the first round, as they did with Walter Nolan yesterday, was in 2016 when the Dolphins took Laramie Tunsil first in their draft at 13th. At 29th, the Cardinals selected Robert Kimdiche, who, remember, had been like the number 1 recruit out of high school, was a complete stud. There were questions about intangibles, to put it politely.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he didn't pan out. And with Walter Nolan, this is a guy whose ceiling is massive, and there are some questions about intangibles again. So I'm like, we're looking at deja vu all over again here. So that could have been another route the Dolphins would have gone. Chris Greer mentioned he got a couple of texts from 2 GMs after the fact, after they picked him, saying, "Oh, that was our guy right there." Okay.
Yeah. You know what I think? There's probably a GM network of like 7 GMs who are all friends, and they do that so they can cover themselves. I didn't lie. I texted 4 other guys and told them, great pick. I would have taken them. And I'm not calling Chris Greer a liar at all. I think he might be stretching the truth here. Yeah. Might be, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, let's take that for what that's worth, and let's not assume, oh, that's a great pick because other teams wanted him. Okay.
Yeah.
I still like personally, especially with the way the first round wound up playing out, I still like the idea. I don't know what kind of offers the Dolphins got. Chris Greer mentioned, and this is certainly par for the course, he was on the phone with other GMs. Don't know what offers he got. In fact, he was talking about still making phone calls or being on phone calls after the Grant pick to see about the possibility of getting back into the first round, as the New York Giants and Atlanta Falcons wound up doing. The Dolphins are in a position necessarily to give up extra picks to swing back into the first round unless they're willing to sacrifice 2026 draft capital. But again, right now, so Kenneth Grant is on board. Here's the truth. They still could use another defensive tackle. I don't know necessarily the top priority anymore. I think cornerback would be the top priority right now. The interior offensive lineman still could be addressed. The Dolphins have 1 pick each in the second and in a third round, except there's a nasty gap between the second and third round. It's 50 spots, 48 to 98. And the reason is because they traded their own third round pick this year to the Philadelphia Eagles to get a 2024 fourth round pick to select Jalen Wright, who certainly looked like a superfluous pick at the time, and last year was. But now may be asked in 2025 to step up and play a much bigger role, ideally as maybe the lead running back, so Devon Achane can be used. How, to me, he would be best used is as a complementary running back that you also put on the field to catch passes, as opposed to giving him 20, 22 carries a game.
Yeah, Jalen Wright is it's an interesting situation because if you look at the short yardage issue, even after you get James Daniels and whoever the other guard is going to be, we think a rookie draftee, you still got a 188-pound running back in Devon Achane. So hopefully Alexander Madison can solve that problem. But if you have Achane and Madison, what do you need Jalen Wright for? And so I'm kind of looking at Jalen Wright kind of like he's not the workhorse. He's not the speed guy. He's not the power guy. What is his role going to be in this offense in 2025? That's what I'm kind of wondering. He was a luxury pick last year, kind of a luxury slash. We don't know if Raheem can make it as a 31-year-old. We don't know if Achane can stay healthy as a guy who was injured as a rookie. So we'll take Jalen Wright. But he didn't play last year, and I don't know what his role would be this year. So that's going to be a very interesting pick to track. What are they going to do with Jalen Wright in 2025?
Yeah, my hope is at the very least he splits carries fairly evenly with Devon Achane. And then Alexander Madison becomes your short yardage specialist, understanding that there were reports out of Vegas that he didn't necessarily have that great a year. So,
hey, Poop, let me ask you this.
Ask me this, Perk.
I'm thinking about writing a column today about the Dolphins loading up on the trenches the last 2 years. But how do you feel about it? You got Aaron Brewer last year. You got James Daniels this year. You got Patrick Paul last year. You got Shop Robinson last year. You got Kenneth Grant this year. But do you feel good about the trenches? Do you feel good about the work? I've still got lots of questions about the trenches. You still got to hope that Chubb and Phillips, and I'm counting the outside linebackers because they're on the line of scrimmage. I've still got lots of questions about the trenches, Poop, and that's after drafting Kenneth Grant, after drafting Patrick Paul, after drafting Shop Robinson. I still feel a little bit queasy about their trench play. I know.
There's that word.
Joe Philbin. Do you feel good about what they've done in the trenches so far the last couple of years?
Well, you can't fault them for not trying because they have tried. The question again, the question is going to be: is Patrick Paul going to emerge and be a solid to above average to good left tackle? If he doesn't, that's a big whiff.
Yep.
Can Chop Robinson pick up where he left off in the second half of last season, or will he be a one-trick pony who's kind of a liability against the run?
Yep.
I think that's still a question that needs to be answered.
Yep.
What are you going to get out of Kenneth Grant from the start?
Yep.
And Aaron Brewer, for what he is as a center, is very good, except if your idea is to become more physical on the offensive line, that's not your guy because he's about the smallest center in the NFL.
Right.
And that was the case when you signed him. Connor Williams kind of brought that physicality a little bit at center.
And then James Daniels with his Achilles, he's still a question.
Right. Yeah. But here's the thing is they're taking shots, and it goes on before that. Because before that, I mean, you can go back to Ron Armstead, they signed him.
Right.
Then they drafted in 2020 and 2021, they were drafting offensive linemen all over the place. Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, Solomon Kinley in 2020, Liam Eichenberg, Larnell Coleman, even though it was a 7th-round pick in 2021, signed Teron Armstead in 2022, and Connor Williams as well, 2023.
You got Isaiah Wynn.
Too. Yep. So they have tried.
They have tried.
This notion that and this is why I push back against this notion of Chris Greer wipes his butt with the offensive line and the issues they have had there. No, they have tried. It hasn't always worked out, but they have made the moves. And again, this year we're in the same boat. They have made moves, and on the defensive side as well.
Right.
And at some point, it would be nice if those moves panned out, but it's not for lack of trying.
There you go. That's the thing. So does that give you more faith in Kenneth Grant, less faith in Kenneth Grant, or are you wait and see? Because what they've done in the trenches so far, they've tried, but it just hasn't been good enough. And do you trust that Kenneth Grant will be good enough? I guess would kind of be the point of my column.
Do you trust it? I don't know.
Based on immediate results of the last couple, they do try. There is no doubt that they try, but are their efforts good enough? That's what that's kind of what I would ask.
Well, but here's the question then I would ask you is how would you look at Aaron Brewer's performance last season, knowing what he is as a center?
Good.
Okay. Good. So then they hit, except if they want to transform their offensive line into a more physical, aggressive group, Aaron Brewer was not your answer.
Right. Yeah. And you had a chance this year. Now, granted, I wasn't a Tyler Booker fan, but he did go the pick before before the Dolphins, and he is an aggressive type. Now, he's limited to me. He's just a guard. He's not a guard center or guard tackle. I was not in favor of Tyler Booker. But if you're looking for attitude change, right, or more aggression or physicality, that's a guy that you go with. And so I really wanted the trench work. They've done it, but at what level? And so are they going to get what they need from all the work they've put into the trenches? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. They have not ignored it, but man, it just seems inadequate and insufficient still.
Yeah, and to me, the guard position has very, very little value as long as you don't have somebody who brings the whole line down. This is where they're just like Liam. No, that's not what I'm saying. But that's unless you have a guard who's going to bring the line down. The guard's not winning you a Super Bowl, or he's not winning you a ton of games. Like you look at the Eagles' offensive line. What has it been? Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, and Travis Kelce. Now he's been replaced by Cam Jurgens, who played well enough that the Eagles extended him. Yes, Landon Dickerson is a hell of a guard. It's not why the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And for the Cowboys, and I know we have a mutual friend who absolutely was in love with Tyler Booker. He's going to replace essentially Zach Martin, who was basically an All-Pro every year, and exactly how many just NFC Championship games that the Cowboys get with maybe the best guard of his generation. Try zero.
Yeah, they had that great offensive line under Tony Romo, right? And early Dak, and it did them no good, nothing.
Correct. So to me, and I've said this before. I mean, I've been consistent in this. I do not like spending a pick in the first half of the first round on a guard, and then somebody's going to throw out David DeCastro. Look, the Steelers won a Super Bowl with him. Yeah, he was picked like 23rd or 24th. Not quite the same thing.
And he had like Marquise Pouncey and some who is the tall left tackle
Villanueva. They had Villanueva at one point.
Right. Yeah, they were a good offensive line.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me, there was no positional value there. And this was interesting. This goes back to comment. I don't know if you recall. Javon Holland said this on the Breaking House Rules podcast with our good friend Cameron Wolf. After he left, he basically dropped something to where the Dolphins' philosophy, which is based on the Baltimore philosophy, is to build everything on defense from the front back, which basically suggests de-emphasizing the safety and a premium on the big bodies. Well, that certainly would mesh with the selection of Kenneth Grant as opposed to, say, Malachi Starks. And Malachi Starks, who Baltimore wound up getting at 26. And I think everybody knows you look at Malachi Starks falling at 26. I mean, might as well pencil him in for 5 Pro Bowls right now. That's just the way the Ravens roll. And it's the same thing with the Eagles. The Eagles wound up with Jahad Campbell at 31. There's a guy that some pegged maybe as high as 12 or something. Pencil him in for 5 or 6 Super Bowls. That's how those teams roll. Dolphins want to get to that point. They're not at that point. Okay, now we're moving into day 2 on Friday night. Do you have any particular players that you're like, I would like him, or somebody who would be like, stay away?
I'm staying away from Will Johnson. I'm cornerback. I'm position, not player. So Siobhan Reveal Jr. from East Carolina is there. The Darian Porter from Iowa State is there at corner. So there are some cornerbacks that are there. Yeah, I'm more position than player. So I'm looking at cornerback in the second round, maybe guard in the third. But if they went with another D tackle or a safety in the third, I wouldn't be mad at them.
Okay, no, that works. Okay, so you're okay. You want to stay away from Will Johnson because of the knee concerns, but you're okay with Ravel coming off a 20 CL based on 2025 medical technology. Okay.
ACL is different than chronic injury problem. Well, I shouldn't say multiple injury problems. ACL is one and done. Will Johnson has had injury problems the last 2 years, and the knee seems particularly troubling.
Sure. And you have a cornerback who didn't run at all during the spring
Right.
for scouts is a little problematic. For me, I think as much of a good prospect as he is, I would feel, God, I cannot use that word again, about selecting Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, who's a really good player, but torn labrum in his hip in 2024. That's problematic for me. I think I might stay away. And there are a couple of, as you mentioned, Porter as a good cornerback still available. Amos from Mississippi is still out.
Yep.
Another player I would stay away from is Shedeur Sanders. I've already spoken my piece on Shedeur Sanders, and I hate the amount of oxygen that he soaks up. And he soaked up again on the first night of the NFL draft. Enough, like my Lord, I want to pull out my hair. Enough already. And then it's like, I saw another thing. I don't know, I'm going on off on a tangent here. Look at Deion's wonderful reaction to Travis Hunter being selected second overall. He went like this. Like, what coach in the United States in college football wouldn't have that same kind of reaction? Why was it made an issue like that? I'm sorry. Yeesh. Woo. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, I digress.
You're anti-Deion. I'm picking up on something here.
I do not like folks who disproportionately soak up oxygen, and he's an oxygen soaker. It's part of the reason I don't like the Dallas Cowboys, because they're going to get stuck on national TV 6 or 7 times, and they haven't done crap in 10 years. But they're the Dallas Cowboys. They just soak up oxygen, and it's the media's fault for just like this. I mean,
unfortunately, from TV standpoint, the Cowboys bring numbers, like the Lakers and the Jets, the big media market or big attention getting teams. They soak up a lot of TV attention because they bring numbers.
I agree, and it's the same with Deion. Is Deion generates interest, and to me, it's like go away. I mean, seriously, can you just be quiet for 2 minutes? It doesn't have to be all about you all the time. And I do think absolutely it might not help his son's situation, because does anybody really expect Deion Sanders to stay quiet and not make an issue in any way, shape, or form is if he doesn't feel his son is treated the right way, as in it's everybody else's fault but not his?
Yeah, the other quarterbacks on the roster, whoever Shedeur goes, whatever team he goes to, good luck dealing with that. Good luck dealing with that. And I'm going to tell you, as a journalist, if Shedeur was with the Dolphins, which isn't going to happen, it would be bad for Tua. And eventually, I would start looking at social media or University of Colorado stories to see what Deion says about Shedeur. Because I'm sure the Colorado Buffalo writers are going to ask him, hey, Deion, Shedeur only had 4 reps yesterday in training camp. What are your thoughts on that? And Deion won't. It's just a zoo. It's a circus. It's whatever you want to call it, but it's going to be a tough situation for the other people, whatever team Shedeur goes to.
Absolutely. And I will say this. I saw the dude play in college. I think he's a very good quarterback.
Yep.
Not good enough to overcome the aggravation that could come with picking him. That's the thing. And he's not Cam Ward, because I think Cam Ward's a complete stud. So for me, I'd like to see a cornerback in round 2. Trey Amos is the one who stands out to me. Yeah. You mentioned Porter. I like. In terms of Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, who's Benjamin Morrison's teammate, would be a nice pick for me as well.
The Florida State kid, Azariah Thomas. I don't know if I might be butchering his first name, but that's another corner.
Make it simple for you.
There you go. That's to say, yes, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
That would be another one. For round 3, now if we're going to look further down, I'd like for the next 2 rounds to be any variation of cornerback, safety, guard. Not necessarily in that order, but 2 of those 3 spots addressed in the next 3 rounds. Again, unless, and then when we get to round 4 on Saturday, this is where I could be talking to somebody like Scadaboo, as an upgrade over Alexander Madison and youth. It's not necessarily a need, but it's round 4. doesn't bother me as much as spending a premium pick on one of those. A quarterback, maybe round 5, second pick in round 4, maybe I could be talking to the Kyle McCord's probably the one I like. Quinn Ewers is the one who's the great scheme fit, visited the Dolphins. Is that a link? Not necessarily, because Kenneth Grant basically said during his Zoom media session after he was selected that didn't necessarily have a ton of contact with the Dolphins. And this is why those 30 visits do not equate a guy being picked by the Dolphins.
I would like to do a story or do some research on the number of starting quarterbacks that come after round 3. We can name a starter, a famous starter from every round, right? Russell Wilson is round 3. Dak Prescott is round 4. Actually, I don't know a round 5. Round 6 is obviously Brady. Round 7, Brock Purdy. I don't think it's worth it to draft a quarterback after the 3rd round if you plan on him becoming a starter. Now, if you want him to be a backup, okay, but I just don't know how many starters, quality starters, come after the 3rd round. So 4th and 5th, I would really say in the 4th, get another offensive lineman, do some trench work, because you can get serviceable players at those positions in those rounds. Again, first 5 picks, which involves the first 4 rounds for the Dolphins, I would like to see them double up on defensive line. So get another defensive lineman in there. You only need one offensive lineman among those picks. If they wanted to double up on defensive back, whether it's safety or corner, okay, I could do that because those players also have special teams value. So I wouldn't mind seeing them double up on some position of need among their first 5 picks.
Okay, and going back to your point about the quarterbacks, to me, the way I would look at it is doing something similar to what the Dolphins did with Skylar Thompson, which was basically, this is a guy we hope can become a backup for several years and perhaps develop into a starter caliber quarterback at some point.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that model, but doing it earlier because, Zach Wilson's only signed through 2025.
Right.
Well, if you draft, say, for example, Kyle McCord is the one I keep throwing out there because I think there's something there. I don't know if you can become a high-end NFL quarterback, but there's something there. You get him by full year as a number 3, and then you see this is a guy we can depend on if he winds up being the number 2 to at the very least carry us through some games. I think that would make sense. Again, not necessarily too early, but late 4th round, 5th round, I would have no issue with that.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Yeah, as long as you keep the perspective that you just said, that you're drafting him as a backup, not as, well, if Tua gets injured, he could be our starter. That's not happening with a 4th round pick, 5th round pick. So yeah, you have the correct perspective there. I could go for that.
Thank you. In fact, one of the Dolphins' best quarterback draft picks, I believe, was a 4th round pick. That was Don Strock in 1974, who wasn't a starter but spent more than a decade as a backup to Bob Greasy and Dan Marino, and it was a very, very good backup. Obviously, that was a different time, but that's kind of the model of what I'm looking at. So, be nice to see some. I don't know about you. It'd be nice to see some trades. Dolphins moving up and down. I like trades. I like trades.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you about a trade today. What do you think are the chances we see that second round trade? What do you think? I think you think it's pretty good that they move up, or they get an additional 2nd round pick.
No, what I could see is them moving down. They're at 48 now, moving down. I don't know, later in the 2nd round, and then I'll give up another pick to get a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, this draft. Listen, I think most of the value in this draft comes today. To me, the 2nd and 3rd rounders, and then especially for the Dolphins at corner and safety and D tackle, they ought to be able to really, really improve their team today. This is the spot where Chris Greer's drafts usually fall off, Poop. 2nd and 3rd rounds. 1st round has been so-so. You can say what I know. You can say whatever you want about
X.
I know. You should have taken Penei Sewell instead of Jalen Waddle. I know. We can go back on all that. But this day is when Chris Greer's drafts really fall off he needs to be strong today, second and third rounds.
Okay. Couple of quick points before we get out of here on this Friday early afternoon lunchtime. For those who care about those things, jersey numbers, Kenneth Grant wore 78 at Michigan. The player who wore 78 last year for the Dolphins was his college teammate, Ryan Hayes.
Oh, interesting.
But Ryan Hayes surrendered that number, moved to 77 for James Daniels to keep his jersey number from his time with the Steelers as well as the University of Iowa. So for those who care about jersey numbers, for those who don't, sorry, I wasted 30 seconds of your time. And the other thing I would say is one thing that does give me confidence for all the arrows that he's taken because of the drafts, Chris Greer and the Dolphins have actually done pretty well with defensive tackles. And I would go back to certainly Christian Wilkins, Devon Gottschall was a good pick. And I'm going to forget the list. I had a list. They've actually done fairly well at that position. In fact, that's probably one of their strongest positions. So let's keep that in mind. We won't know with the draft. Generally speaking, for the most part, it takes 2-3 years. For the most part, I would say, and no shot intended, nothing personal. I apologize if it comes across as a shot, but I think we knew pretty early Channing Tindall wasn't going to work out as a third-round pick. Yeah. And having said that, I hope I'm wrong, and he takes a massive jump in year 3. Year 3 or year 4? That's going to be year 4. Yeah,
4.
Except it's been 3 years now. Not looking good. So that's going to do it. Thanks as always, my friend Chris Perkins. We're going to see you out at the Baptist Health Training Complex on Friday evening for rounds 2 and 3. Thanks, everyone. We're going to be back here this weekend, possibly Saturday. Definitely early heads up. I'm going to do a live podcast on Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Set your watch. Catch his fine work, my man Chris Perkins, at sunsentinel.com, the Dolphins Deep Dive, which is going to be Monday at noon on YouTube. Did I get that? I got that right, Perk?
You got that right. Right.
Okay. In the meantime, check out his content. Check out my content and my team's content at MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Friday.